Oh boy. Oh yeah. We waited 9 years, guys. We finally got a new redesigned iMac, and oh man, does this thing look good. So today's Apple event was a ton of fun. We got a lot more than we bargained for. Last week, we legitimately thought it was just gonna be iPad Pros and then we go home. But lo and behold, we got a completely new iMac, and I can't wait to test it on the channel. So if you wanna see all the coverage of this new iMac when it's available later next month, make sure to get subscribed and turn on notifications. Now, let's talk about everything that's new. Today's video is sponsored by Clean My Mac X. While I'm sure we're all excited for new Apple products, they still need good care to keep the best performance, protect from vulnerabilities, and prevent possible issues. Clean My Mac is an all-in-one cleaning and optimization app that helps keep your Mac free of issues and top up its performance. It's one package that combines multiple systems to build a virtual map of your Mac's storage with a feature called Space Lens and allow you to clean up and analyze junk files. The app's most popular feature is the Smart Scan feature. It examines your system for system log files and user cache that is no longer needed. Smart Scan also does a quick malware check and runs some optimization tasks to speed up your Mac. And all of this takes just a few seconds. You can learn more about Clean My Mac X, which, by the way, recently gained support for Apple Silicon Macs, by checking out the link in the description below, and there's also a free trial available if you're interested in trying it out before purchasing. So check out Clean My Mac X today. Now, back to the video. So today's spring-loaded event did not disappoint, and as the rumors have been saying fervently for the past 4 days, we did in fact get a new iMac, and it is a radically different beast from the 21.5-inch iMac that it replaces. Now, in my live stream coverage of this event, I was surprised at the controversy over the design of this new iMac. Personally, I think it looks amazing, and the many colors that it's available in, I think look really, really good. There are 7 colors available on the new iMac. There's silver, a really rich, deep blue that looks a lot like the iPhone 12 blue. Then there's purple, red, orange, yellow, and green. I really like the green actually because it almost looks like a teal color, and I really dig it. Now, the big controversy with this new design is that it still has the iconic iMac chin, and now the bezels are white. Now, it's worth noting that the front of the iMac is a little bit different than it has been for the last 15 years, basically. Since the iMac has been made of aluminum, the front bezel was glass, and the front chin was aluminum, but that's not the case anymore. Now, the entire front of the iMac is one sheet of glass. The upper portion of it has a white bezel, and then the lower portion is still glass, but it's color matched to the rest of the iMac. Now, this is where a lot of the controversy was. I was kind of surprised to see it because at first, I don't know, I think I was kind of thrown off by the white bezels and the presence of the chin. But as we saw more of the product shots, I actually think it works. I think I like the look of this iMac. It's definitely a stylistic approach to bezels. Normally, bezels are just the space around a screen that you have to have. But what Apple did here was, rather than try to make them go away, they made them kind of part of the design. Now, I understand that that's subjective and you can very easily find monitors with thinner bezels, but I kind of like the way Apple did it here. It's a super slick design. I think it's clean and minimal, and there's 2 really interesting things about it. Number 1, there are basically no ports. So like the M1 MacBooks that we already have, there are 2 Thunderbolt ports, and then on higher end configurations, and don't worry, we will get into the different configurations in a little bit, you can get 2 additional USB-C ports, but they're not Thunderbolt. That is a limitation of the M1 chip. There can only be 2 Thunderbolt ports, but this is being positioned clearly as the mass market entry-level iMac with more expensive stuff to come. So maybe I can forgive it. Maybe. Another thing that Apple did with this design was they moved to an external power supply. This was actually something that I played with a little bit on one of my live streams like over a month ago, where I was like, okay, if you're gonna run Apple Silicon in an iMac, do you really need that big beefy, the previous one had a 200 watt power supply? And that way it's a much sleeker design and you can put the power supply on the ground, kind of like a laptop charger. It's also worth noting that the power cord that connects to the iMac is one, proprietary, which is maybe a little bit disappointing, and the cord is color matched to the iMac with a braided cable. It looks really slick. Another interesting feature with this new power supply system is that for the higher end configurations that have gigabit Ethernet, rather than having the Ethernet port on the iMac itself, it's actually on the power adapter and it runs through the cord. That might seem like a weird choice to make, but it actually kind of makes sense because it means that you don't have to run the Ethernet cord up onto your desk, and it makes it look a little bit cleaner. Other highlights of the new iMac include, finally, a 1080p webcam. So finally it'll match the 27-inch, which got a 1080p webcam in 2020. And I'm not even gonna give them any credit for that. That's long overdue. They should have done that in like 2016. What I will give credit for, most likely, is the sound system. Now, iMacs have sounded really, really good for a while, but Apple has given the new iMac a huge boost. So we're already going from a pretty high bar, and now we're really taking it up a notch. And this thing supports spatial audio. It's got like insane amounts of bass, apparently. I can't speak on this until I can actually try the iMac out, but given Apple's track record with audio in recent years, like with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and even the base model Apple Silicon MacBook Air, I think we're in for a real treat with this sound system. Okay, so let's talk pricing and configurations. So just as before, there are 3 different models that you can choose from for this iMac. The 27-inch iMac is still on Intel, has not been changed. That's still available as it was, but previously, the 21.5-inch iMac came with 3 different models. The base one was a little bit hampered, and by a little bit, I mean a lot. I actually bought that thing a couple of weeks ago, and it is terrible. It's $1,100. It comes with a dual-core Kaby Lake i5, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, and a 1080p display. Now you may be wondering why I'm referring to this in present tense. That's right, folks. You can still buy that thing. They didn't discontinue it today. Apple did discontinue the higher-end previous Intel 4K iMacs, but they kept the 2017 base model at $1,100. And the reason that they did that is because this new iMac is actually a price increase over the previous model. So rather than starting at $1,099, it starts at $1,299, the same price as an M1 MacBook Pro. In addition to that, there are 2 models coming in at $1,499 and $1,699 respectively. Now, in the base configuration, you may notice that you actually get a 7-core GPU. So this is probably the same M1 chip that you would find in a MacBook Air. However, I would expect it to outperform a MacBook Air pretty significantly because this has active cooling. There are 2 cooling fans in this computer, so I would expect it to perform as well or better than a MacBook Pro. At that price, just like the other M1 Macs, you get 256 gigs of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, when you step up to the $1,499 model, you get the same storage and RAM, but you get that 8-core GPU. You also get 2 additional USB 3 ports in addition to the 2 Thunderbolt ports that you get on all of the models, and you also get gigabit Ethernet. Now that's a little bit weird because, as I mentioned earlier, the Ethernet port is located on the power adapter, so it has nothing to do with the iMac itself. You just happen to get the power adapter that has an Ethernet port if you pay more money for it. You also get a keyboard with Touch ID. So Apple redesigned, or I guess refreshed is really a better term, the Magic Keyboard and the Magic Mouse. They look basically the same, but the Magic Keyboard is now a little bit more rounded, so it looks more like the Big Sur aesthetic, and it is of course color matching, as is the Magic Mouse and Keyboard. And then if you pay for the higher tier iMacs, it comes with Touch ID, which is honestly a pretty good feature, but I am surprised that there's still no Face ID on the iMac. Guess we gotta keep waiting for that. So looking between the 3 different configurations that are available, at first it might seem like a little bit of sticker shock, right? That Apple has increased the prices by about $200 on all 3 of these models. But there are a couple of things to keep in mind. Number 1, the iMac configurations have not changed in a really, really long time, and as such, the prices haven't adjusted for inflation. So as far as Apple is concerned, the iMac has actually been steadily getting cheaper over the past couple of years, and so I think for them this is a bit like a price correction. But that being said, I think these are actually pretty decent value, especially if you look at the base model. Now granted, you are missing a couple of things like Touch ID, Gigabit Ethernet, USB-C ports, and one of the GPU cores. However, as an overall package, I think it represents a really, really interesting value. Let me explain. If you buy the base Mac Mini, you get essentially the same computer. 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, active cooling. You get one more GPU core, granted, and that's gonna cost you $699. That seems like a huge cost savings, but the iMac comes with a 4.5K display. So if you wanna add something like a Dell Ultra Sharp display to the Mac Mini, you're already gonna be spending $1,100, and that's before you add a webcam, speakers, mouse, and keyboard. And interestingly enough, the same thing actually applies if you wanted to build a PC. I put together this PC part picker list with a Ryzen 5 3600, 8 gigabytes of RAM, a 256 gigabyte NVMe SSD, just, basic parts like a basic case and power supply, and then I put in a pretty inexpensive 4K display, a standard keyboard, a pretty basic mouse, and some Bose Companion 2 speakers, as well as a Logitech webcam, and it costs $1,200. So even if you build a PC, if you try to match this whole package, you're not really spending that much more to go for this iMac, and you are getting, objectively, a really, really refined and polished package. I do mind the fact that there is absolutely no chance of upgradability or repair with this thing. And it's a bit of an unfortunate trend, seeing the removal of ports and upgradability from the iMac, which was the last semi-upgradable and port-rich Mac that you could really buy without spending $6,000 on a Mac Pro. It's a bit of a shame. But it is important to keep in mind that this is the mass market iMac. This is the one that's targeted towards a much broader range of people than the type of us who pay attention to this stuff and the people that watch this channel. You guys are probably a little bit more pro-focused or perhaps more interested in performance than the target market for this iMac. And basically, I think this iMac accomplishes what it is trying to do very, very well. And I can't wait to get my hands on it because it looks really exciting. So that is the new iMac. I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing later next month. And if you can't wait to see me do that, make sure to get subscribed. That was a bit of a clunky sentence. Also, go ahead and follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.